Good evening and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. It is a Wednesday night. I think it's hours, more than that. I've got my maths has left me, but we are just a couple of days away from the second test between the Springboks and the British and Irish Lions, as the Springboks try and bounce back and level the series. And after team announcements on Tuesday, which is kind of makes it for quite a long build-up. I'm being joined tonight by Lacanio and Tyrone. We've seen them before on the channel. So, evening, gents. How are we doing? Good to have you back.
No, Ty.
Yeah, evening. Good to be back. Thanks for the invite.
Evening.
Is everybody as cold as I am? Because in Gauteng it's flipping freezing up here.
Listen, since the president has opened,
you found some coping mechanisms, have you?
Listen. Also, Grahamstown has been kind all of a sudden, so I'm not complaining this side. It's been actually warmer the past 2 days than it's been, for the past sort of 2-3 weeks. And I don't know, Ty, in Queenstown, that's very cold down there.
No, it's been a lot better the last couple of days. Yes, so we had some snow at the end of last week, but that seems to be gone. So we're warming up, and I suppose the bottles being open does help a bit, eh?
Yeah, did you guys see the video? I think it was Greek was on Saturday. Posted a video of Tafelberg Park just covered in snow, and it was currently snowing while I taking the video.
Sure.
I mean, that was the place where they were busy complaining about playing in like 42 degree heat in the beginning of the year. And imagine going off to Tafelberg Park last weekend and playing in the snow. I mean,
that must have been horrible. It would have been horrible.
But yeah, so I mean, it's quite weird on a Wednesday. We've had the team out for over a day. Teams coming out early and early. I think Warren Gatland might be naming his on Sunday at this rate. But a couple of changes on both sides, and I think it was quite interesting. I'm glad we got you on here, Chong, so we can talk about the scrum, because me talking about the scrum is, I mean, I didn't do that area at school, I sort of just stuck myself in the back line. Didn't want to do any of the grunt work. It's just not. It's too messy up there. Too complicated. And but I think what was quite interesting. And we'll start with the front row as everybody sort of jumps in the comments stuff like that. Yeah, so start jumping in the comments. Let us know what you thought about the team. We were live last night. We had quite an in-depth discussion about a couple of things. So if you've got more questions about the scrum, then Lacanio and Tyrone, I'm sure, can answer your questions a lot better than I can. But I think that's probably the biggest feature for this weekend. No Oxenchair through injury, and then Trevor down to the bench. Stephen Kitsoff, Frans Malherbe starting, which I think we probably would have thought would have been the case maybe about a month ago. And then for the Lions, Maka Vinapola into the starting lineup. But I'll start before we sort of talk about the front rows itself. Chongs, do you reckon if Oxenchair was fit, he would have started, or do you think they would have much like Trevor chucked him back on the bench and started Kitsoff and Malherbe?
Listen, if I was in Jacques' position, I think I would have stuck with it. I think just what Kitsoff also offers in terms of that leadership, right? I think he's a senior player, right? Sort of getting more involved in the second half rather than have Ox, and I think he played exceptionally well, right? I think he did enough to sort of warrant a selection again, a crack, and more than even just the scrum, I think he was massive also just around the park. So I think that form would have been rewarded. I honestly think if he was fit, right, I would have stuck with him. I would have stuck with him. Yeah, I definitely would have started him.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think he did himself any disservice. In fact, I thought that starting front row last weekend was silenced a lot of people, and ironically, then the second front row was under a bit of pressure. So Tyrone, what do you make of the front row this weekend? I mean, and we were talking about this last night. Do you think somebody like Frans Malherbe is better starting than coming on as an impact player?
Yeah, so I agree with Chongs. I think Ox definitely would have started if he was fit. And I'm sure we'll get into that scrum that sort of hurt his neck and the calls and everything. But I think Malherbe for me is definitely more of a starter. I think last week, for me, when they selected him on the bench, my thought process was that they were probably going to go for scrum dominance in that second half, and it definitely backfired on them. So I think him starting the first 40-45 minutes is a good call. Trevor also does, and Vincent. Vincent now at the tight end, so he offers you a little bit more mobility in that second half, and he's quite good over the ball too. When he comes off the bench. So yeah, he's definitely more of a starter. Would have been interesting to see what would have happened. All things given, if they would have stuck with Trevor on the bench, because instead of Vincent if Ox did start. But Malherbe definitely starting probably will be good for him and good for the team in the first 45 to 40 minutes.
I think
sorry, Steve. Yeah, I think Frans Malherbe, I think he's arguably, I'll put my hand sort of head on the chopping block. I think he's arguably the best scrummaging tight head in world rugby. I think I for one honestly thought he was even man of the match in the final that we played. Right, just the performance, how dominant he was at scrum time in that final, and also surprisingly, just his work rate around the park. And I think just because he had missed quite a bit of rugby, right? I think that half sort of would have gotten him going, and I think it's a good thing to see him starting. And I think definitely when you look at Trevor or Vincent Koch compared to Frans Malherbe, I think Frans Malherbe is a more sort of solid set piece tight head, and then the other guys can add a bit more, sort of go forward with the ball in hand, and more importantly, as Tyron alluded to, is just maybe they're on the floor. Right, I think that's the breakdown. I think is one area that the Sparks will be trying to sort of also attack. But yeah, we'll get into that a bit later.
I think which is quite interesting is the fact, and I think it's a very, I mean, it's happened before, but probably much more so this case. The fact that we're talking about people being better starters and coming off. I think if you go back to sort of 10 years ago, it was just. I think there's so much more attention to building a bench rather than just saying, right, let's pick up 15 players and then who's our second best starting front row? Well, they're on the bench, and they kind of just come on and hope that they can do a job. But nowadays, and I mean, the bomb squad sort of shed the light on the fact that it's so that you literally have to sit there thinking who can we put on the bench that can come on and make a big difference. And some players, I mean, even we've seen it with the Bulls and how Jake has deployed, Lizo and Jacques Van Rooyen or Lizo and Trevor off the bench in the second half and backing, Mornay Smith and stuff like that, and bringing on his best players and saying, right, in the last half an hour, I know that they can turn a game for me. So it's been quite an interesting sort of, and I mean, even seeing team terminology change. A couple of teams now sort of talking about, you no longer talk about your starting 15 and your bench replacements. It's your starters and your finishers, and the fact that they've got such a big job coming off the bench rather than just changing personnel, which is quite cool. And we'll talk about the bomb squad because obviously it's the 6-2 split has everybody quite excited. But I think this is a very interesting question. I think this is something that is going to be quite. I mean, for somebody who doesn't sort of scrum a lot, and I think soon you guys can sort of come in here. Trevor back at Lucid. That's what Jacques said yesterday. That Trevor will be covering Lucid. He had to actually check with Rusty that Vincent does also cover Lucid, but he said that Trevor will be covering Lucid this weekend. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was originally a Lucid and then was moved to tight head quite early in his career, as so many props are. I mean, you're stuck being a tight head coming through school, and all you do is get to professional level, and they take all the Lucids and say, well, we'll just convert you and we'll be sorted. But I mean, we'll start with you, Tyron. What is the biggest challenge for him moving back to Lucid, coming off the bench as well, which is a very different role than what he had last week?
Yeah, so I think obviously he's got to do a job for us there. I think it's definitely easier going from tight head to Lucid than Lucid to tight head. So I think he'll transition quite well for me. And then a nice thing is Trevor's been playing tight head for the last, I think it's 2-3 years now. So, I think at the World Cup, if he didn't get injured, it would have been interesting to see how they handled him there. He probably would have been on the bench or started as a tight head. So I think he'll be okay. The nice thing that he has on his side is he's been playing tight head. He's sort of learned what tight heads want to do to the Lucid, and he's got the experience of Lucid. So he's got both sort of sides of the scrum. So I think he'll be okay in that second half. And I think, we shouldn't have too many issues there. But he also offers us quite a lot off the bench. We've seen it before with him. He comes off the bench and just the impact is massive. So I think he'll be okay. The transition for him shouldn't be too difficult. Also, they wouldn't have gone that way. So I think they've got faith in him. And I think it would be good for the rest of us to do the same.
Yeah, definitely agree there with Tyron. And I think Trevor for a very long time was sort of the fifth prop in the box squad. So it was sort of the floater. And I'm sure come practice time, there were he scrummed down at Lucid plenty of times. And I don't think they would have made the move if technically he wasn't sound and comfortable in that position. So I think even though we haven't seen him play game time, right, but I think he would have had plenty of opportunities to scrum down at Lucid, at tight head during practice sessions. And I think just generally speaking, those practice sessions do tend to be very, very competitive and very tough. So I'm sure he's more than ready. He's more than ready to go.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, I mean, there was a big thing during the World Cup that they were doing sort of live scrummaging all the time, and they were just putting the front rows together and just saying, live or die. Whoever out scrums you during the week, that could very well be the starting lineup and stuff like that. I think that point about the fifth prop being quite, I mean, it's probably a bit like the Thomas Atoy is at the moment, where he's kind of sort of floating around there. We saw him playing elusive in the SAA, but he's sort of playing a lot of tight and stuff like that. So I think that's an interesting one, and I'm hoping. I think it's a very good point. The fact that you learn once you've been playing a tight end, you now learn what they want to do. And Oxenchair was talking about the fact that he had studied Tyke Furlong a lot, trying to understand what he does, what he doesn't do, and that's why he managed to cope so well. Because we were saying a week ago, I think it was at Sean on here, and I was saying, you know what, if we get to Saturday and Oxenchair does get out-scrummed by Tyke Furlong, that's one of the couple of tight ends where you kind of raise your hand and say, listen, he's just a world-class prop, but we handled it very well. But I think genuinely, our scrums in the second half very disappointing. So how much can you do in a week? I mean, we saw that Trevor struggled in the SAA game, and a week later was suddenly okay. Do you think we can sort of fix that? Because we can't be having that sort of drop off like we did this weekend, where we put on our sort of star front row, waiting for this to have this big impact, especially when we're looking at how the Lions grew in. So how much can we change? And also, do you think timing wise we got it wrong last week? Did we introduce them too early?
Yeah, so I think for me, we definitely got it wrong. When a front row is going the way that our guys did last week, you don't take them off at half time. I think, look, we don't know the severity of that neck injury. Maybe that forced the change a bit sooner than they wanted to. But I think if we could have, I think they would have got that a bit wrong. One thing I will mention, though, and I had a bit of a think about it, is, the two props that came on last week are both English props. You had Sinclair and Vulupola come off the bench. And who's their scrum coach? Matt Proudfoot coaches them. Yeah. So they would have improved a hell of a lot from the World Cup, and it's the first time they would have been scrumming against the Boks since the World Cup. So I think we all might have underestimated their front row a bit as well. And then when you've got, as Chong said, you've got Malherbe coming off the bench, who's one of the best tight ends, and Kitsop is also phenomenal. You would have thought we would have dominated, but the Lions definitely stepped up, and I think they've got to get a bit of credit there, where credit's due. And I think the biggest thing you'll change in a week is mindset. I think mindset will be a massive difference, and guys will be a lot hungrier and wanting to redeem themselves. And I think Kitsov and France will definitely have something to prove now after there's question marks over their sort of performance. So I think mindset will be the biggest shift, I think, for me.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with Ty. I think. Yeah, no, they definitely got it wrong. I think once you've got that momentum with the front row, just let them run loose. And I think also just the timing in terms of, making wholesale change in the front row as compared to maybe changing them at different intervals also played a part. But I think also the shift in the scrum, I think, came as a result of the dominance that the Lions had early on in the second half, scoring off a line out. Right, I think just that generally in terms of mindset, now what Tyron just alluded to, right, that would have given the Lions pack a massive boost. And also then coming off cold as a front row, trying to assert your dominance, it becomes a bit tricky because what tends to happen is you tend to try to use strength rather than using technique, right? And you could see Frans Malherbe maybe was trying to lock, right, and trying to use more of his strength rather than, being in a strong position to try push. So I think it was a couple of factors, but I think really them scoring early with that line-out drive, I think just gave the whole forward pack a boost, and all of a sudden, that just spills over to different areas of the game.
Yeah, and in terms of when you put them on, I mean, and I was talking about this last night, and I was kind of sort of spitballing, but do you think also in terms of the impact, the fact that you go into half-time, so for example, you've now had that Lions front row, they just played 40 minutes. Now you're all a bit tired, you're all wheezy, you go to half-time, but now you get that 10 minutes and you can sit down, you can catch your breath. And then you go out, and I feel like, I was a bit like this. Look, I had no fitness whatsoever, so maybe that was probably why. But, the sort of first couple of minutes after half-time, you're feeling fine, you're feeling fresh and stuff like that, and then it sort of hits that sort of 10, 15 minutes. Now you're thinking, shit, now I've played 30 minutes. Now I've played 35 minutes. Now it's sort of catching up. So do you think that also maybe sort of took away from it, the fact that it was a new front row, but they were scrumming against another front row who just had 10 minutes to sit down. They maybe weren't quite as tired. They hadn't been running around. Whereas if we had delayed it for, I don't know, 10 minutes or 15 minutes and said, let Rory and Tyke Furlong and Luke Dickey run around 15 minutes and then say, right, here's a brand new fresh front row, deal with it. So when is the best time to put in a front row to have that best effect?
Yeah, I think personally, also sort of defends, they tie. It's very tricky, but you sort of hit out and see how they do after 5 minutes, right? Generally speaking, especially your tight head. You give it about 5 minutes and then from there on in, but sort of in the period of, let's say, 10 minutes after halftime, right? As you said, what you want to do is you want the guys getting, especially also your forward pack, you want them to get back into the game. You want them to work with the confidence of the first half because they had dominance, they were working well. And then from there on in, you know that, okay, the front row has emptied out their tank. You can then bring on a fresh front row.
Yeah, I think for me it's very similar. I think you've got to be able to judge. But I like what you said there about the fact that we put on a fresh front row who scrum for maybe 10 minutes or so against the Lions who just rested, and then the Lions put on a fresh front row after we'd been sort of under the pump a bit. So I think that did play a massive role there. Definitely good analysis. I like that thinking. But again, it comes down to, for me personally, it comes down to dominance. If you look at the Premiership final, Joe Marler played the whole Premiership final, 115 minutes, and he was okay. He made that last tackle in the extra time. So, but nowadays, I think 45 to 50 minutes, you should probably replace them in a test match. Get some fresh legs on there, and also as Chong said earlier, I think the biggest thing with the second half is that 5 minutes that they have is mentally you're getting ready, physically you're getting ready, and you'd be surprised how much of a difference that can make. That 5 minute warm up or mental preparation.
Yeah, and I think as also Sean said, I mean that we defended them more really well. That's one thing, but when they scored that try, you just sat there thinking, shit, that was just, you can't stop them all like that. It was just so well said. It was kind of inevitable. And being a forward, I mean, it's rolling more and a big scrum, which gets forwards pumped and sort of takes to the next level. So, I think that'll be quite a bit of a chicken. I mean, it'll be an interesting one this weekend in terms of the two teams. I'm sure that Jacques won't want to play his card too early, but I think it's also going to be when does Warren Gatton put on his reserve front row and how does he manage it? So I think what we've seen with the series, it's been quite a lot of small elements which has been sort of creeping in. The fact that the scrums for the Lions were pretty poor, actually not poor, but very average during the provincial games. It was sort of the one area which they really didn't put our provincial teams too much under the pump. Some of them they did, but I think back to the Lions, the first half, and what was a Sigma Lions, sort of reserve front row, they were handling quite well. The Sharks front row was handling quite well, even against the Stormers. It was they won a few penalties, but we didn't exactly see them breaking apart scrums and finishing off stuff, which we saw when as soon as they went wide or pretty much did anything else really. So I think it's interesting that after all that, they managed to then put in a really big scrum performance in the second half this weekend. But we'll move away from the front row. And I think the biggest thing and the biggest critic, and I mean, for those football fans, it's a bit like Jose Mourinho, I suppose. If you play a style of rugby which is not particularly glamorous but wins you stuff, you can back it. The entire World Cup, we sat there saying, stop kicking the ball away. We won a quarterfinal. We said, stop kicking it away. We won a semi-final. And then look, to our credit, we did play slightly different in the final. But I think if we had kicked the entire time of the final and won it, you have to hold your hands up and say, okay, you know what, kick whenever you want because it's effective. But it's amazing how as soon as you lose, it's people have been saying, well, you deserve that if you want to kick all the possession away. So the question is, how much do we stick to our guns and say that is what we want to do? Or how much do we sit there saying, they've got a point. We've got two world-class wings who didn't do anything but see, the Cape Town Stadium lights for, the full 80 minutes. Tyron, how much do we reckon we change that?
Yeah, look, so I think we mustn't underestimate also the Lions. The Lions playing those warm-up games, they ran the ball all the time. Their wings were scoring tries like it was Christmas, In the test match, it'd be interesting to see how often their wings got the ball within the first 60, 65 minutes. They also kicked a lot of possession. Do we kick too much? Well, as you say, it didn't work this weekend, so yes, we do. But if in the second test, if we end up the same game plan, which I think we probably will keep, I think there's a lot of other smaller factors that played its role. So we sort of fell away in that second half. Match fitness, I think, played a big role in it, and the Lions tactically were also much better with what they were doing. So look, for me, we've shown in the final. I mean, if you can run the ball like we did in the final, that you definitely have that in your arsenal. But you've got to earn the right to do that. And I think the Springboks for them to earn the right, they've got to feel that their pack is dominating. They're going forward. They're winning their set piece. They're mauling well, and then they'll start to look to run it. If they haven't got that and they're not comfortable in the fact that they're dominating the game, I don't think they will run it like we want them to. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But for me, you've got to do what works for you, and it's effective either way. So South African supporters are very critical on how we do it, but. I'd rather us win this weekend by kicking and we win by 1 point than us trying to run the ball. And I promise you, if we run the ball and we look phenomenal and we lose, then it's going to be a problem because now we've gone away from our strength. Yeah. So it's very tough for the coaches. So you've got to back what you believe in. You've got to back your plan. And I think that's what we'll stick with.
Yeah, I think, with the kicking game, I think I genuinely believe just like you have to earn the right to go wide, right? Equally with the kicking game, I think you have to earn the right to kick. I think the one thing with the Boks is just that for the first time, they didn't actually get over the advantage line. They were well met by the British and Irish Lions. And as a result, what then happened is because we weren't playing the expansive game, because we were so sort of one-dimensional, right? What happened is the Lions could actually afford to drop more guys back, right? Which meant that when they actually did receive the ball, they weren't kicking it out like most teams do, right? And for us to win that territory game. That's what happened in the first half, but in the second half, that didn't happen, right? And as a result, they could put pressure kicks onto Kwacha and have chasers who can actually put pressure on that. So I think for me, I would like to see just maybe shifting it a channel wider, maybe trying to expose the 13 channel just to keep the wingers, the outside guys a bit honest right before we actually go for the kick, because I think that was the one area is the fact that we actually weren't able to get over the advantage line, and as a result, it just seemed as though our kicking game plan didn't work. But I think as a game plan, it works for us, right? We saw it in the first half when Ox was getting over the advantage line, Trevor making good carries. It worked because then it means that the British and Irish Lions don't have the luxury of actually dropping guys back. They actually first have to engage, right? So I think just be a bit more expensive, maybe look to expose the 13 channel a bit more, right? But I still think pretty much we're going to see a kicking game. We won't shy away too much from that.
Now let's talk about some of the replacements and the people they brought in, because I think every single replacement, I think the front row is largely injuries with the Boks, and they're apart from Herbert. But for both teams, I think there are a couple of hints in the selections. Kwaka Smith being dropped, and they're bringing in Jasper Wiese. You're talking about not being able to get over the gain line. That's the one thing that they'll probably think, right, this is what we can bring him in. He can try and he's going to get over the gain line far more effectively than Kwaka is. Kwaka might get you over the gain line, but not through brute force. You might find a half gap or something. It was also quite interesting to see talking about defending Kwaka Smith. I must admit, I felt a bit sorry for him under the high ball. I mean, how often was he sort of mopping up and stuff like that? And I mean, you got Johan van der Merwe, who's far more looked like a loose forward than Kwaka Smith does, running full tilt at you, and they was having a field day. And people talking maybe they were going to sort of maybe move P-Steph the Toy to being under the high ball because he's just a bit bigger and can take those hits. But Jasper Wiese, so now sort of being a bit more of a physical presence on the attack. The Lions bringing in Conor Murray, who's known for his tactical kicking, so that's what he's going to bring in. But I also think that, do we think that the Lions are maybe a bit are thinking that we might run the ball a little bit more? And as you talk about the 13 channel, and I'm glad you mentioned it because they brought in Chris Harris, who's a very, very good defensive outside center. Mm-hmm. So I think, how much, I mean, are we reading too much into this, or do we think that there are small things? The fact that also, what I think is quite strange is you brought in Conor Murray, who's so good with his tackle kicking and stuff like that, but you've left out Liam Williams completely, who's arguably one of the best players in the world under the high ball. I mean, I think no Josh Adams in the side is people still sort of wondering why, but I think that I think ironically, I think for as many tries as the Lions scored through their wings in the provincial games, I think if they don't have a wing that scores a try the entire series, I don't think they really care. I think if Juan van der Merwe is not there for his raw out and out pace and incredible stepping ability and stuff like that, but they think, well, maybe he can run over people and he brings a lot of physicality. It's why I don't think Reece Salmon and Josh Adams are. Lots of people are asking to see them, but I don't think that they are bringing what Warren Gatland wants to see. But Charles, we'll start with you. How much can we read into those new players that have been brought in? Daly dropping to the bench, Farrell, the fact that the Boks are now gone to a 6-2 split. So now we're going to be bringing on Lewitt, Kwagga, as well as Markov and Staden. Talks of maybe Steph Troy might be switching back to lock, depending on how things go.
Sure. Yeah, I think I'll start with the Boks. I think it's an interesting selection from the Boks, and I think it, for me personally, makes sense because I think one of the issues in the second half is how easy the Lions were getting the clean ball come breakdown. Right, I think they were having a field day. Ali Price, looked like $1 million, right? No one laid a hand on him. And I think actually having a Van Staden, having a Kwagga Smith, having a Trevor, guys who are actually very effective, right, when it comes to the breakdown, I think that's going to be massive, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on that particular area, because I think that's maybe an area that as soon as the guys got a bit tired, right, they started fanning out and they just wanted to defend the man rather than actually attack. So I think the thinking behind that is let's try kill it at source, right, disrupt it there, the breakdown, especially in the second half, right, as not to give them the freedom to just go about it and actually play as they wish. Yeah, so I think good changes, right? I think I would have still stuck with Kwagga. I just think it's going to be a massive challenge for Visser come this weekend. It's a must-win. Just the external pressures, and if he can handle that well, great on him. But I think I would have maybe stuck with Kwagga, have a 6-2 split with Van Staden and Visser sort of then coming off the bench. But that's just my.
What are your thoughts so far on Visser? I don't think we've seen quite the player that we saw in the Premiership, which I know it takes time, but it's a bit like Alstad. I've never been particularly impressed with Alstad in the Springbok jersey. I think I'm more willing to give Jasper Visser the extended run. He's obviously got the time and stuff like that. But what have your thoughts been when he has played?
Yeah, that's the thing. A guy coming into an environment like that's never going to be easy, right? And that's why I think sort of just chucking him into a must-win game is a bit, at least for my side, like for my as I see it, a bit risky, right? Just chuck him on last 30 minutes and say go play your natural game, right? But now he has to think about the technical side a lot rather than just playing his natural game. And I think he's just sort of been trying to fit into a system, playing 8, and maybe that's not the role he plays, or the role that he has to play for the Boks is not necessarily the role that he was playing for his club. Right, so there's a lot of adapting that he still needs to do, and I think, but so far so good. I don't have negative, right, and I think we just need to be patient. We need to be patient with him. I think he's just getting used to a different role within the setup. He did a lot of good things, right, like leading up to just his backtracking, sort of the areas that he took up on the field. You can see that from a tactical point of view, he's in the right areas of the field. Right now, I think it's just a matter of him then finding that freedom to actually go and actually play his natural game.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think we've seen good things from him, but I think we all know that we haven't quite seen the best. I think to a certain degree, I think we still haven't quite managed to get the best out of somebody like Kwagga Smith. He's had some very good performances in the Boks jersey and often goes under the radar, but we haven't quite seen that performance we saw for him with the Barbarians against the All Blacks. When he was a man of the match. Yeah, but I'm very keen to see how he goes, and I think he's going to be under quite a little pressure. I think Markov Staden's also going to be under a lot of pressure because I think that Kwagga Smith got a lot of flack for conceding penalties, but at the end of the day, if your job is to make a use of yourself at the breakdown, you will concede penalties. If you're not being penalized, or you're not even if you're not winning any penalties or conceding any penalties, in that position, then you're just not doing your job. But we'll go through some of the comments, and then we'll come back to you, Tyrant. Yeah, so Albie Safa saying that Dwayne doesn't need any blockers from the high ball, but everyone else needs them in our team. We're so bad at using blockers. I think it's a good point. I think we did leave a couple of people, and just like Ches and Colby in the box just saying, well, just jump. It's just doing Van der Merwe. You'll be fine. Kwagga Smith as well. Then Contender saying we should go back to a 1-3-3-1 shape. Jean saying Boks should try to attack the lines on first face ball, just keep them honest. Tim Berry is English. Congratulations. That's for Visa, the 1980s policeman nostalgia win us the game. Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of that. I felt our pack simply had higher IQ and outsmarted the Boks pack, compare Marker, Morris, and Eben. Yeah, look, I mean, I think to a certain degree, I think the Boks in the second half, especially, sort of almost 1-for-1 did sort of outplay us. You know, I mean, Courtney Laws was better than you probably used to be even like a piece of Toy in the second half, and Maury Toja and Alan Jones had two very, very good games. Maury Toja, I think, was sort of bridging on the lines of it a couple of times, a couple of turnovers, but it's one of those things, and that's what I said in my combined 15. I was saying at the end of the day, if you get penalized for it, they're going to hate you for it, and you've done everything wrong. Yeah. But he didn't get penalized for it, and as a result, he won themselves the game. I mean, that turnover, which is causing a lot of debate, right by the try line. Yeah. It's a 50-50. If he gets penalized for that, you know, that could be a clear scoring opportunity. He could even get binned for that. But as a result, he stopped a certain try. Pretender saying, did you guys ever stay in Grahamstown and go to Kingswood College? Didn't go to Kingswood College. Chongs was there for quite a few years. I was in Grahamstown for 6 years. Chongs is still in Grahamstown. He's never leaving. The water's kept him there. Yeah. You're not very faithful, are you? I mean, came from Graham, then went to Kingswood. Now he's at St Andrews. So he's a bit of a Grahamstown traveller, but he's still down there. I don't know, Tyrone, where did you go to school? Where did you come through?
I went to Graham College, so
there we go. So the answer is yes. We've all in Grahamstown. We've all not had the water and ridden the potholes. And then Dylan Britt says, a bit unfair on the Lions now. It's 15 versus 16. I'm meshed about that. So if Pizza scores a try, who gets the credit? Anyone, I don't really care. The stash. I have a question for Prince Harry. Okay, comments are a couple of strange ones there, but we'll sort of move on. So Tyrant, the Lions tactics maybe, and looking at the Lions changes. Conor Murray coming in and Chris Harris. I think those are probably the ones that to focus on. What are your thoughts? I mean, you got to kind of feel sorry for Ali Price. I thought he had a very good game last weekend, and Conor Murray, who ironically was probably not been his best on the tour, hasn't been bad, but Ali Price was sort of there on form. But I think Chris Harris is a nice pick.
Yeah, so I think for me, the Conor Murray selection is an opportunity for the Springboks. He hasn't been great, and I think if you look at our selections and what we've done is the guys coming on and even the guys starting. You know, if you look at Peter Steff, he disrupts a ruck. Sia is phenomenal at disrupting a ruck, and I think Murray, if you've watched him over the last couple of weeks, the ruck isn't perfectly set and he's rushed. I think his box kicking becomes a bit iffy. Compared to maybe 3-4 years ago. So there might be a bit of a chance there for us. But I think what Gatlin has done is he's gone with a more experienced person in that position, which I think is a bit hard on Ali Price. You know, as you said, he was phenomenal. He was very, very good. And his box kicks in that second half is what sort of put us under the pressure. So, yeah, Murray will have a bit of pressure on him. But I think there's something there for the Boks to exploit. And then when they've gone with the different outside centre, but I think, you know, if you look at Daly, I think it was his fourth or fifth game at outside centre in his whole career. And he did struggle a little bit. And I think, you know, he gives you a bit more cover off the bench. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Maybe they're going to look to attack more at those outside channels as well. I'm sure that might be something that they're thinking of. If not, you know, then maybe they're anticipating us to do that. So I think the Lions are, you know, they made two small changes, but I think, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens on the weekend with those. And I think the Springboks have the capabilities to maybe exploit one or two things there. Another different center combination for the Lions, which is good for us.
Yeah, and I think that we've got such a settled center combination, and those. I think Damien Delendi and Lukanya. It's funny because I think that Damien Delendi has tweaked his game a little bit over the years, and for the best. But I think those two have sort of developed into one of, if not the best center combination in the world. I mean that's an area of the field which we're so lucky to have. But yeah, I'm very keen. Funny enough, it's interesting that Elliot Daly, who even myself, I was very surprised he was even in the squad when they announced it, and yet he has played. He's been in every single match day 23, the entire tour. He has not missed a match the entire tour. So it's interesting for somebody who a lot of people were quite surprised was even on the tour, has been one of the sort of the mainstays. And a couple of comments about the pitch itself. the fact that it was sort of giving away underfoot, and now we've got to plan another test on it this weekend, and then another test on it next week. It also seems like a bit of a slippery surface. A lot of people saying that it's built for soccer, hasn't quite transitioned to be rugby and stuff like that. Look, I'm not going to pretend to be a groundsman and stuff like that, and I think it probably will just take a little bit of time. But yeah, I mean, do you think is that a worry for the scrums? I mean, my argument, I suppose, is if the pitch does give away, it's giving away for both props. I don't think there's anybody an advantage.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, and I think Cape Town actually had quite a lot of rain right leading up to the test match, and I think just even in the best sort of rugby stadiums, we see the ground give way when the scrums are quite heated. So I don't. Yeah, I think it's the same playing surface for both teams, and sort of the refs will be. I don't think there were too many reset scrums, actually, if I'm thinking of the weekend, because of collapsing or anything. So I don't think the pitch is too much of a worry.
Yeah, I think it's something I suppose they need to work on. Because I think people have been slipping on, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's just a bit of a strange one. It's a strange thing to sort of be fixated on. I know a lot of Western Province supporters are very, very bleak at their move, but I think that the Cape Town Stadium is just a class facility, and I'm all for that move. Timon, do you think the pitch is going to play any sort of major part?
No, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. It's the same for both teams. I mean, we saw guys slipping. The backs were slipping even, So it's just one of those things that happen. I think what it does do, though, for me, is it gives the Lions, British Irish Lions, a little bit more advantage in the fact that they're sort of used to playing in a wet, slippery surface like that more than we are. So I think, if you heard Kitsoff's interview the other day, they try to lock their boots in and that's what they try and do. Whereas, the guys from the Northern Hemisphere have maybe one or two other tricks, but we would have learned. And I think, the pitch is how it is. I'm sure the groundsman would have been able to patch it up and fix it up as much as they can. I think Cape Town's experiencing another cold front, but there's not as much rain this time. So we should be looking at a better pitch, which will be good for the game.
Yeah, and if there are two props that should be used to that, I mean, at least Kitsoff and Frans Malherbe have been playing at the stadium a couple of times. Not too many, but they've got at least 3 or 4. But what we'll say is, if you want to get some South African advantage, we just need to move the entire tour to Kimberley and go play at Tafelberg Park and introduce them to that ground, and then we'll start seeing a bit of an advantage. And then, I mean, it would be a miss if we didn't talk about it. But how much have we enjoyed Jaco Johan, the Western Province fan, the Twitter storm that Rassie Erasmus, the fact that he still to this day denies that it is not him putting out full HD, well-edited clips with no branding, anything like that on a Twitter account which has no followers, no nothing, and yet he's managing to pick it out. I mean, this is box office stuff from Rassie Erasmus, isn't it?
Yeah, but for me, that's the internet nowadays, isn't it? You can do whatever you want. You can. Jaco Johan is probably the second most famous man in South African rugby at the moment. So it's been very, very interesting. The comments have been great. I think what Rassie's trying to do is he's trying to do what Gatlin did, just not so blatantly. I think it's been comical though. It's been so good to watch. It's taken a lot of our minds off of the players as well, which is maybe a part of the tactics. But I think his message also gets across. Social media is a great thing. Yeah. So I'm sure those people up at the top, World Rugby, those type of people have all seen the clips and heard the things. So, no, but it's been very, very comical. I've loved it. And hopefully Jaco Johan stays for a long time to come.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I agree fully with Tyron. I think, just Rassie having a dig. And I think also sort of his comment in one of the interviews about Ben O'Keefe being in New Zealand and Gatlin being in New Zealand, but just the way he went about it, sort of nonchalant. I think it's been comical. Good gamesmanship, I think. Just
I mean, I've never. He said he didn't give a shit about what Clive Woodward said. He basically implied that the TMO, that they would never ever question the TMO. He said. He just said everything. He went after absolutely everyone. He talked about the fact that Warren Gatlin should have said so. He still sort of chucked in the fact that World Rugby were really slow at getting their feedback. We're sort of raising questions that World Rugby need to, be clearer on the laws like that. I mean, and credit to him because, and I think he felt, and he said so. He felt he had to because you could imagine Jacques Nienaber sitting there by himself in front of the entire press, knowing that Rusty's been sitting there causing all that storm, and then going to say to Jacques, right, well, chat to us about your director of rugby. What I've really enjoyed is the fact that people are just so overworked by this whole water boy issue, which I think is such a non-issue and something that's been. I mean, lots of coaches have. I mean, I think it was Brian about it. Somebody was saying that it's whilst he might be sort of probably giving more instructions, it's not a new thing for somebody, part of the coaching staff or a selected medic, or I mean, with Dwayne Vermeulen's doing stuff like that. People who are just there to relay the message and stuff like that. All you're really doing is cutting out the middleman. I think it's just been blown out of proportion. But I've really enjoyed. I mean, I think if there's one thing, the fact that we haven't had fans, we haven't been able to go to pubs and talk about this, we haven't been able to see the Lions during midweek doing things like that. That there actually has been more sort of off the ball stuff, because rugby takes place once a week for 80 minutes. And after that, we just speculate and everything. So, I think it's been fantastic, and I hope, and we need to see more of this. I mean, let's be honest. Even if you don't watch rugby, if you want to start generating interest in the game, this is a decent way of doing it. People are talking about it. People are obsessed. People are creating, now people are creating different accounts and stuff like that. So, I mean, how much do you think this is? Do you think we would have even had this had it been not COVID time and stuff like that? We weren't all just so attached to being online and stuff.
No, I don't think that we would have had these other sort of issues and stuff with the crowds and everything. We would have been so focused on that, and the players and coaches would have been so involved in outreach, and on the off days they would have been doing this interview and that interview. So they in camp, and they I'm not going to say that maybe they're a bit bored or whatever, and just want to get people talking.
They're very bored.
I think it's been very good, and I'm sure the players are probably chuckling as well, and they're all like having a look. And so I think it's been quite nice. But what Rassie has done is he's also highlighted a couple of things that World Rugby need to have a look at. The fact that they only get back on a Tuesday, some of the calls and things that have happened, it puts us a bit of pressure on the refs and the higher powers that be to have a look at it. So Gatland was straight to the point, and maybe he was a bit more direct. And I think the way Rassie's gone about it has been a bit more comical, but also I think it's raised a bit more because of how he's done it. It's raised a bit more talking. I mean, everyone's talking about it. New Zealand's talking about it. People in England are talking about it. Australians are talking about it. So I think it's been phenomenal. And maybe thanks to COVID, we've had the opportunity to see a different side of Rassie.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's just taken the pressure away from the players. I think the spotlight could have easily been on the players. Everything in media about the players, will we be able to bounce back? And I think what Rassie has actually done is just take all the attention right off the players, and the players can just focus on actually doing their business on Saturday. So yeah, I totally agree with Ty. I think it's just been fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that, as I said, I think it's definitely got the message far more across than Warren Gatland just saying that they're not happy with the official, as opposed to literally the director of rugby, probably the biggest rugby name in the moment, your current World Cup winning coach, going on Twitter and sharing clips of calls the referee made that were wrong. I mean, it's so blatant, but I love it. I think it's been so cool to sort of see that side of him, and the fact that he's willing to do that and do stuff like that. And it's always been quite out the box as Erasmus. So I don't think it's particularly. I mean, it's not surprising that he's running water and doing stuff like that. I mean, we had Jock Niederbar on the side of the field during the World Cup. We've had Dwayne Vermeulen running water, but I mean, it's not the only one. Ben Smith has run water for the All Blacks. We've had lots of people doing that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of, so I'm trying to look at some of the comments, see if there's anything here that we can talk about. Conor Murray slow ball, no sniping, and predictable kicks, planners front up and tie up box and open play. Second half of your box, not eating your carbs. Well, maybe from two coaches in terms of the fitness, because a lot of people are saying that's why we faded, and I think they look, at the end of the day, the Lions have to be fitter than we are. They play more rugby. They haven't had as many COVID issues and stuff like that. How much can we improve in a week? Because I don't think you obviously can't improve them a lot, but I mean, all those guys that were sitting in a hotel in Johannesburg and stuff like that, I mean, they can't be less fit than they were a week ago. But how much can we sort of take in that next step in just such a short space of time?
Well, for me, I think it's a matter of game fitness more than anything else, and I think the game against the Lions would have been very good for us. I think the fact that Sia Kolisi was in quarantine and then he ended up playing 80 minutes tells me that he's not unfit. That it maybe game fitness is a different thing. And I think what a lot of people get wrong when it comes to fitness is they think that okay, the Boks were unfit, so Monday we must run until we have guys vomiting, and that's just not how it works nowadays. So you'd be surprised how much of a difference it will make playing against the Lions and the intensity that they brought, the way that they got through the whole game and seemed to lift their energy. Because we did see against Georgia, we also dipped a little bit, and then in the SAA game we dipped a little bit. So I think we'll be okay, match fitness wise. It would have helped us a lot. And the Lions, credit to them, they've also been up in Joburg playing all their games there, so altitude would have helped them. But I think things would have evened out a bit more now. And if the Springboks can lose by 5 points being unfit, and getting used to that, I'm surprised what they're going to do in a week and how much better they'll be for it.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I think, not to be worried. I think the Boks will be just fine, right? I think, it's just that game fitness. And also, I think just the guys coming in drips and drabs, that might have just destabilized the camp a bit. We saw Sia only coming in late, right? And he had been in a hotel room for close to 2 weeks, all right? But he still got through 80 minutes, as Ty said. So I don't think fitness is the issue. It was, just a matter of just getting game time underneath the belt. And I think the guys will be fine. They'll be up. And I think now desire is a funny thing. I think it adds automatically about 20 minutes freshness onto your mileage. So I think there will be that desire from the Boks. And I think, just better game management, doing a better couple of things better. And I think, they'll be more than fine.
Yeah, look, and there's one thing you don't do with the South African side or Springbok side is write them off. Put them in a corner and they'll come out swinging. But I think match fitness is probably right, and probably also match sharpness. It's being in those situations, it's again on the field and stuff like that. Something which has got quite. I'm definitely one of them that worried. We've gone back with a 6-2 split, which is. As a backline player, it's gutting for me because I'd like to see more backline players come on. But we enjoyed the bomb squad. But one thing which does have me, sweating, or might have me sweating beads on Saturday is if Andre Pollard goes down. Not so much Damien Willems operating at 10, but we're going to have to ask. We could be asking Damien Willems or Cheslin Colby or Faf de Klerk. Listen, it's the 82nd minute. We've got a penalty towards the right hand side of touchline. Do you reckon you guys can slot it? That's the one thing for me, going with Damien Willems and not for Steyn is the goal kicking could be a bit of an issue if we might not even have Faf de Klerk, we could have Ursula Yankees on the field. So, Tom, do you think what do you make of backing Damien Willems? It's a huge call by them to say, listen, we'll back you as our utility back.
Yeah, well, it's a massive call for them to. If you look at the caps, Willems' caps, Van Staden and Visser, they've all got less than 10 caps, and they're all playing in probably one of the biggest games in Springbok history since the World Cup and everything. So it is a massive call, but there's got to be something that makes them believe in Willems. And I think the faith that they're showing in him probably will come through. We must remember Morné Steyn was also, how many caps did he have when he kicked the winning 50-meter kick? So you'd be surprised what a coach backing you can do, and you'll probably find that all the players will have a lot of belief in him. So it is a massive call, but you've got to, as a coach, you sometimes have to make those decisions. And if I was a player and I'm 20 odd years old with 6 or 7 caps, and my coach says, listen, because they've obviously spoken about this, and says to me, listen, I'll be back you to make this kick or make this play or whatever it might be. It's going to do a whole lot of confidence for me. And I think Francois Steyn and Elton Jantjies, those guys this week probably would have been with Willems helping him, doing whatever they can to make sure that he's ready. So big call. If it doesn't work, we're probably going to maybe say, it's a terrible decision. But I think for the future, Willems, if we're going to go with 6-2 in the future in Springbok rugby, Willems is our man to do that. So, what better time than now? I think we give him a crack and see how he goes and believe that he can pull it off. Sure. If not, get Colby to do it. He's done it in a top 14 game. So we have the big match and players. I'm just big on giving. I'm just very big on believing in your players, and that rubs off on them a lot. You've seen Willems now compared to how he was playing for Western Province. You look at him in the Springbok jersey, different player.
Yeah, and I think me personally, I think Willems is sort of a player that's got temperament. First touch as a Bok, steps Ryan Crotty, offload out the back. Right, you don't do that if you don't have self-confidence. right? And I think just obviously the backing, he is a World Cup winner, right? And I think for the mere fact that the Bok management squad has gone with him as sort of that utility back. Listen, when the time comes, I think also as a young player, you thrive. As a professional, that's what you want. You want to be placed in those situations. And yeah, I'd back him all the way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that we're going to see a bit of a coming of age for Damian Willemse, which is a weird thing to say. I think he's about 23 years old, but he was just so highly rated, and South Africans we've kind of got that bad habit of seeing a schoolboy who rips it up, and they go, right, well, we're going to see him in the Springboks in 2 years, and I think we've seen some really good players who have maybe had almost had non-careers because maybe they were sort of rushed through the system a bit too quickly. But I think he's matured a lot. And I think, as I said, I think playing at inside center. I mean, I think he came on against Georgia and made sort of 6 tackles in like the 10 or 12 minutes he was on, and looked really, really solid. So, yeah, look, I mean, if there's one thing for you to be saying, right, we're going to pick you ahead of Morné Steyn, who won the Lions Series back in 2009. I'm going to pick you against ahead of France Steyn, who's a 2 World Cup winner. You must be backing yourself and must feel pretty good about it. But I think it would be interesting to see how many people are walking into the warm-up with a kicking tee. We're going to have 4 or 5 people sitting there saying, right, well, if we need to, we're ready. But I think even also the Herschel Yankees call. A lot of people saying that Kobus Reinach should be playing, but I think it's also a game of, you know what, we're going to back Herschel. He did the job. He came off the bench for the World Cup final. So we're going to continue backing him. So it's really cool. I mean, I think if there's one thing that I think that we've learned with this management is that they're very easy to trust. They've been there, they've done that, they've made hard calls since they walked in, and 95% of them have paid lots of dividends. So they've still obviously got a lot of trust from. They've definitely got the squad trust. And I think it's probably time that we as fans giving the benefit of the doubt. An interesting comment over here. Somebody was talking about off the ball here. Sorry, so Kelly Forster was saying, I listened to Off the Ball where they had Ronan Agara as guest. He doesn't think the replacement backs are in the same class as the Lions. I'm shocked that he doesn't think that. But I think that they're very different backs. You've got Ali. I mean, look, it's always going to be, at the end of the day, we're talking about 3 players on the bench for the Lions who are all starters for their nations. 2 of them for England who are in the World Cup final, compared to literally the second choice players of a nation. So of course they're always, in theory, they should always be better. But I think that I don't think you can compare Ali Price, Owen Farrell, Ross Daly to Damian Willemse and Herschel Yankees. I mean, quite apart from anything else, there's quite a big age difference and definitely a thing. But having said that, I think Ali Price is in sublime form. But I mean, Owen Farrell is a class player, but I don't think he's playing his best rugby at the moment. And I think Elliot Daly is very versatile, but I also don't think he's playing sublime rugby at the moment. So I don't think it's quite like that. Look, if Finn Russell was on the bench, I'd probably be a bit more nervous just because we know that he can either be world-class or terrible. But I mean, that's somebody who I think can change a game. If Josh Adams was on the bench, I'm probably worrying more, even like a Liam Williams, who are world-class players and in good form. But I mean, what do you reckon about that comparison, Charles? Do you think it's fair or just very different players?
Yeah, I mean, you're comparing seasoned players to kids, right? Yeah. Hirsch is a baby new to the international scene. So is Damian Willemse. So I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and definitely say that the Lions bench is better, right? More experienced. But also, if we were to sort of speak about potential, I mean, we know what Damian Willemse is capable of. All right, so I mean, that's a nonsensical comment in my opinion. Obviously. You've got 2 young players up and coming. Who knows what they will be? And the reality is they are World Cup winners, and Farrell, Ali Price, and Daly aren't. Right? We can also equally make that argument. So it's a 50. Like it's one of those, Steve, where you just like, okay, obviously with the experience, the Lions have got the experience, but I don't think it's fair for us to sit here and compare the 2.
And also, I mean, I think, Herschel Yankees might be 2 years older than David Willemse, but in terms of his rugby career, we forget how young he is in his rugby career.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think, did you play against him?
I played against him.
So he was Varsity Shield about what, 4 years ago, maybe?
2017.
2017. Yeah. So 4 years ago, he's playing Varsity Shield. I mean, I don't think he played that. Did he play at Rhodes?
I know we played away at UWC.
I don't remember watching him. I remember watching Tristan Lates. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, so he was Varsity Shield 4 years ago. He went Varsity Shield. I don't even think he played Varsity Cup, did he? Or did
No,
they? Did he actually? Yeah. So in Varsity Shield, Stormers, Springboks,
Yeah.
World Cup winner Lions in 4 years. So even
Yeah.
though he's 25, he's not like he's been playing, under 19s, under 21s, junior box all through the thing, and he's a seasoned player. He's still very new to this, but I think it's just that excitement that makes it so attractive. And I also think that we're very much players like that, I suppose, are sort of come with the man. And I think Trevor was a bit like that last weekend, where he was under so much pressure and he stepped up. But I think that yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, both of them could come on and have horrible games, but what they'll learn from it, they are the next generation. So I'm very happy to see. I mean, it would be, let's be honest, it would be safe, but you wouldn't get excited seeing a bench of, Marvin Ory and Morne Steyn and Kobus Reinach and Frans Steyn, and you sit there thinking, oh, fine, that they can do a job, but you don't sit there going, oh, yes, I want to see that. This is going to be quite cool. It's like going on the end of their tour and not taking youngsters. It's kind of like, cool, we'll probably win, but it's not exciting. But something I wanted to talk about, and we'll sort of move away a bit from this weekend, but the fact that we're missing Dwayne from here in this thing, which I think has shown people that we need like a long-term number 8. And there's a couple of positions, and we're talking about maybe the center depth. The fact that Dave Willems has had to sort of fill in the inside center. The fact that after Lekanya, we got Jesse Creel and stuff like that. But sort of who's the next generation? And we'll talk more about it when we get to the end of the year. I know this is very sort of long term, but in sort of the rugby championship and stuff like that, which players would you guys like to see more of? The fact that we're seeing Willems and Herschel Yankees being backed, which players would you like to see either being maybe being called or just being given opportunities that we haven't quite seen yet? Ty, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so for me, I think, look, it is tough, but Rassie and them, and I'm sure there's a succession plan. It's good to see guys like Nohamba in the squad. You've got Similani's in the squad. For me, I would like a guy that's not in the squad that potentially, before he gets snapped up by another country, is Tyron Green. He's been phenomenal overseas. There's a couple of good guys coming through the ranks, You've got the Sharks captain. He's phenomenal.
Pepsi,
Pepsi's he's really good. So, you've got guys that are up and coming. I think the quicker they can get into the box setup, the better for them, But at the moment, I think we're pretty settled in what we're wanting and what we're expecting. The Dupree brothers were in the squad and they've been in and out. For me, there might be something there that they're not really fitting the mold that we're looking for. But they also haven't had an extended run. So I think there's just so much talent. It's just a matter of fact of identifying the guys and getting them in there. But also the next question could be is when do you blood them? End of the year tour this year, we're playing the 3 big nations. So do you go and blood them then and then we lose and we say, well, we've gone in with the young team? Or do you play them against the All Blacks in the championship? Do you play them, when do you actually do that? It's a tough juggling act, and I think what the All Blacks do so well, and I think it's what we're doing now is we select guys who almost come into the squad as internships and sort of learnerships, and they're in the system. They know they're not going to start, but they're just learning and absorbing everything. And you find that those guys in the next 2-3 years become the stars. The All Blacks are renowned on interview tour to say he's coming with us. He's not going to play. We're just going to blood him, and then 2 years later he's playing and he's in the mix. And so, I think there's not as much to worry about as we maybe think. I just think it is a matter of getting guys up there and getting them to play and learning what the system is all about. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 2 years, but lots of talent to choose from for me.
Yeah, we really need that Barbarians game at the end of the year. That would have been sort of the perfect sort of end of it. And I was saying last night before we go to Chong's, the fact that it would be really nice. I can't remember. I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago when we had the genuine SAA side playing those. I think it was 2 matches or 3 matches against the French Barbarians. More of that type of thing, because I think there are so many players and there's so many coming through in the comments. The likes of Pepsi, Evan Ruiz, Edo van der Merwe. I mean, we haven't talked much about Warwick Galant, who hasn't been part of these things, but it would have been interesting to see what his role would have been had he been fit. The Hendrickson brothers, Andre Esterhazen. So it's so difficult trying to blood. I mean, you're the world champions and you expect to be the world champions, and we don't get. I mean, we're getting what three mid. We kind of you only get about 12, 13 tests in a year. and they all mean something. And I mean, me and Chong's had this conversation a bit like, maybe do you look at the Argentina games and maybe look at there, but at the same time, if you want to win the Rugby Championship, you've got 2 Argentina games, and then you have to go and play 2 games in New Zealand, 2 games in Australia, which is a huge ask. So, but yeah, Chongs, what do you reckon? Who's got your fancy, or what's your sort of, if you're Coach Rusty and Director of Rugby, how are you bringing these players in?
Yeah, I think there's just a couple of positions that I think we honestly just have to have an honest look in. I think sort of if we can get blood to additional locks. So I'm thinking of a JD playing. I think I love him as a player. Ruan Norkia, I think he's really showed up. Right. Also, 8th man. I think we've got Noche, who unfortunately missed out. I would have liked to see what he would have brought in this Lions series. We've got Ivan Roos, who's playing exceptional rugby at the moment for Province. And I think, we've got a lot of loose forwards. Pepsi, I can even go to Vincent Koch, but I think also the fullback option is one that we also need to look at closely. And I think hopefully Galant is fit and ready to go, right? Because I think that's also an area that we need to sort of focus on. And I think end of the year tour, right? I think my approach at least will be, what areas in the BOK team do we have to start looking at, right? Also, I think we need to start looking at a viable also backup option at 10, arguably one could say, right? Alton is not getting younger. We've got Mornay Steyn, who should, I would imagine, doesn't make it past this year.
It's Johan Goosen, dude. We've talked about this. Johan Goosen's in the BOK team next weekend. You're allowed to just play 2 games at fly half and suddenly be in the second choice block. It doesn't matter, dude. We've seen the conversation on Twitter. They made the call.
Well, that's an option. So I think there's certain positions that I think we need to focus on, right? And I think just trying to blood a couple of players in those positions, simply because I think the guys are getting older. Your Dwaynes, your Villies, those 2 particular positions I think will be the focus area.
Yeah, I think the locks are a good call. Look, I mean, generally we're not too bad with locks, but Frank Moss, even Etzebeth, both 30 by next year. So, they can look. I think the bulk of our squad minus Villy and Dwayne would make the next World Cup. You could push some of those sort of players, but but you do want to bring more in. But I think what is going to be so nice and what I really look forward to is just the United Rugby Championship and seeing that these players doing it on a week in, week out basis. Like, I understand Johan Goosen's been good, but I'm not going to put him in the box squad after 2 games at 10 against the SAA where he had no pressure and against the shittest Sigma Lions side I've seen in a long, long time, unfortunately. And I say that as a Lions fan, so I can talk about that. But but when these sort of players, if Johan Goosen does go and play a full season in the United Rugby Championship, and by the time you're talking about this next year, he's gone and played 20 games at fly half for the Bulls, and he's playing his best rugby, then I think he is an option. Yeah. I think there's a lot of players, even something like Evan Roos, who's having a storming season at the moment. You can't just come in and have. We actually haven't played that many games. Maybe sort of 9 or 10 games, be really good form, and be like, okay, cool, you've now just hopped over all of the Dupree brothers who haven't really had much chance. So, yeah, it is a balancing act, and I think that 15 is an interesting call. But what I think will be quite interesting, and we've already gone over an hour, so we'll start wrapping up now, is where we'll see some of these players playing in the provincial unions. The fact that there's already been a call that Damien Williamson needs to go to inside centre at Stormers. But John Dobson reckons that he can keep him at fullback and maybe play Warwick Galant at outside centre. And how they can work that one. When Mornay Steyn goes back to the Bulls, is Johan Goosen going to play at 10, or is he going to suddenly go, right, well, we can put him at
13
at outside centre, and where's if Kwaka Smith is going back to Japan? I don't even know if he plays 8th man in Japan. I assume not. But will they maybe sit there saying, can you play him at Japan, or do they look at bringing him back and then say, can you play him as an 8th man as a potential succession plan? So I think that will be quite interesting from that perspective. But yeah, just final thoughts in terms of this weekend. We'll do score predictions, I suppose. Score predictions and sort of a couple of key areas that you might think could be the factor. I'll go last, so I'll let you guys sort of put your cocks to the block first, and then I'll jump in at the end. So Ty, we'll put you on the spot first.
Yeah, last time we did a score prediction, I was so terribly wrong. So I don't know if I'll do that again.
There's a reason I stopped doing Super Brew.
I do think, I honestly think that the box will be much better, especially in that second half. So I think the box will win. I think we will see a different Springbok side. So I think we'll definitely win. But how far or how much is another story. I think for me, what I'm looking forward to in the big matchups would probably be the second half performance. Our bench is going to be massive for us. And then, I think we spoke a lot about it in the beginning, is our front row. That starting front row as well as the one coming off the bench. Those again, we can't let the Lions dominate us. We saw what happened when they started getting the upper hand last week. If it happens again this week in the second half, it's going to be tickets for us. So I think that will be where it is, and we will win or lose. But I'm really looking forward to it. It feels like I'm coaching or playing or whatever. I'm flipping. It's nerve-wracking, and So it's exciting. I really hope the Boks can take it to 1-1, and then we next week we go and win the whole series. I'm positive we will win this weekend.
Yeah, Boks by 5, 26-21. I'm calling it.
Straight in.
But I think honestly it'll be the second half, especially the breakdown. I think that's where the Boks win it or lose it, is how effective are they in sort of disrupting that Lions ball. I think if we can do that successfully, if we can put pressure like we did in the first half last game, and then also with Conor Murray possibly going out and Ali Price, it's a different dynamic coming into a game, right? Maybe with your team behind as an inexperienced sort of young international player, if I could put it that way, right? As compared to starting. So I think Kwacha again, massive game from him for starting, and I think to be down to who wins the breakdown in that second half. And I think that's who will walk away. I think, we're going to see plenty of kicking. So it's just a matter of, are you able to disrupt and slow them down and actually just get them committing a couple more guys to the breakdown so that they've got less chasers, and possibly then you can sort of look to exploit the gaps that will naturally then come up, right? Because of them having to commit more guys to the breakdown. So I think it's going to boil down to who wins the breakdown in the second half, and that side would win. And I think with having Trevor coming on, who's good on the ground, Kwacha and Fitzpatrick, I think, everything is looking good for the Boks. And Marks, how can I forget Malcolm?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, 100%.
Yeah, I think if there's one area that, I mean, if the second half we get dominated the breakdown, I might just retire from watching rugby. As I said, if you've got Trevor, Malcolm, Kwaka Smith, Malcolm Mustard, you might still have Damien Elindi on the pitch as well. If you're still struggling at breakdown, then just give up. Because if you're not gonna dominate it with those players in the field, you're never gonna dominate it. I'm also gonna go with the Boks victory. I think we will have to. Not allowed on the channel if you're not. So I'll probably go sort of 20 points to 15. I reckon we score a try this weekend. I'm not sure if we'll do much more than that. I think for me, I suppose I'd just like us to sort of rise to the challenge. They've kind of thrown down the gauntlet and says we will match you physically. And in the words of Rassie Erasmus, every now and again we've just got to go and do ourselves and fuck them up physically. So I'm hoping we maybe try and do that. Jasper Wiese back on and stuff like that. And just sort of go. I think if we do get that physical dominance, that's the best way of getting Chesa and Mapimpi and stuff like that in. If you are going to start playing a couple more phases, even before you either kick it or if you want to spread it, create some space. So I'm hoping that'll be. I probably want to see more phases and more sort of carries from our forwards, and I'd like to see a good scrummaging performance, just so we don't have to see too many scrums. We can see more of our backline running around. But so we're all going with an SA win. So we'll probably, I'm almost wondering if you're putting the Boks on themselves, because a week ago we all said SA to win, and then they lost. So maybe I should have put my curse on them and said that the Lions will win this weekend. But I think even as the neutral, you want the Boks to win and sort of set up that important third clash. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Lekanda. We've lost Ty. We'll thank him in absence. Lucky to have you guys on the channel, stuff like that. And as I said, we've gone over he's back. Hello and welcome back.
Sorry, chefs.
No worries. We're just saying thanks for jumping on. And hopefully the next time we're all on, we're talking about either we're doing this next week and talking about the all-important thing, or we talk in a week's time, we're sitting there saying, right, do we put in our strongest 15 for pride, or do we just, throw the dice for the last game? But we'll see this weekend. Everybody in the comments, thank you very much for hanging out with us. I won't be live tomorrow. I'm going to be live on Gareth Mason's channel. Like we did last week, I was with the Rugby Guru and Skinny Rugby, so we'll be there. But we will be live on Saturday, obviously, for this game and stuff like that. And I'll confirm which other games we'll be doing live watch along and stuff like over the next few days. So to everybody out there, please do keep safe, vaccinate if you can and all that. And I'll see you guys all very soon.